Upon one occasion he could not resist the impulse of again going hunting, though in the 82nd year of his age. Exacting from his friends the promise that should he die his remains should be brought back and buried by the side of those of his wife, he took a boy with him, and went to the mouth of the Kansas River, where he remained 2 weeks. Returning from this, his last expedition, he visited his youngest son, Major Nathan Boone, who had reared a comfortable stone house in that remote region, to which emigrants were now rapidly moving. Here he died, after an illness of but 3 days, on the 26th day of September, 1820. He was then 86 years of age. Soon after the death of his wife, Colonel Boone made his own coffin, which he kept under his bed, awaiting the day of his burial. In this coffin he was buried by the side of his wife. Missouri, though very different from the Missouri of the present day, was no longer an unpeopled wilderness. The Indians had retired, thousands of emigrants had flocked to its fertile plains, and many thriving settlements had sprung up along the banks of its magnificent streams. The great respect with which Colonel Boone was regarded by his fellow citizens was manifest in the large numbers who were assembled at his burial. The Legislature of Missouri, which chanced then to be in session, adjourned for one day in respect for his memory, and passed a resolve that all the members should wear a badge of mourning for 20 days. This was the first legislature of the new state. Colonel Boone was the father of 9 children, 5 sons and 4 daughters. His 2 eldest sons were killed by the Indians. His 3rd son, Daniel Morgan Boone, had preceded his father in his emigration to the upper Louisiana, as it was then called, and had taken up his residence in the Femme Osage settlement. He became a man of influence and comparative wealth, and attained the advanced age of 80. Jesse, the 4th son, also emigrated to upper Louisiana about the year 1806, where he died a few years after. The youngest son, Nathan, whose privilege it was to close his father's eyes in death, had found a home beyond the Mississippi. He became a man of considerable note, and received the commission of captain in the United States Dragoons. The daughters, 3 of whom married, lived and died in Kentucky. In the meantime, Kentucky, which Boone had found a pathless wilderness, the hunting ground of Indians who were scarcely less wild and savage than the beasts they pursued in the chase, was rapidly becoming one of the most populous, wealthy, and prosperous states in the Union. Upon the eastern bank of the Kentucky River, the beautiful city of Frankfort had risen surrounded by remarkably romantic and splendid scenery. It had become the capital of the state, and was situated about 60 miles from the entrance of the Kentucky into the Ohio River. Many of the houses were tastefully built of brick or of marble, and the place was noted for its polished, intelligent, and hospitable society. It was but a few miles above Frankfort, upon this same river, that Colonel Boone had reared the log fort of Boonesborough, when scarcely a white man could be found west of the Alleghanies. In the year 1845, the citizens of Frankfort, having, in accordance with the refinements of modern tastes, prepared a beautiful rural cemetery in the suburbs of their town, resolved to consecrate it by the interment of the remains of Daniel Boone and his wife. The legislature, appreciating the immense obligations of the state to the illustrious pioneer, cooperated with the citizens of Frankfort in this movement. For 25 years the remains of Colonel Boone and his wife had been mouldering in the grave beyond the banks of the Missouri. There seemed, said one of the writers of that day, to be a peculiar propriety in this testimonial of the veneration borne by the Commonwealth for the memory of its illustrious dead. And it was fitting that the soil of Kentucky should afford the final resting place for his remains, whose blood in life had been so often shed to protect it from the fury of savage hostility. It was the beautiful and touching manifestation of filial affection shown by children to the memory of a beloved parent. And it was right that the generation which was reaping the fruits of his toils and dangers should desire to have in their midst, and decorate with the tokens of their love, the sepulchre of this primeval patriarch, whose stout heart watched by the cradle of this now powerful commonwealth. The honored remains of Daniel Boone and his wife were brought from Missouri to Frankfort, and the reinterment took place on the 13th of September, 1845. The funeral ceremonies were very imposing. Colonel Richard M. Johnson, who had been Vice President of the United States, and others of the most distinguished citizens of Kentucky, officiated as pallbearers. The two coffins were garlanded with flowers, and an immense procession followed them to their final resting place. The Honorable John J. Crittenden, who was regarded as the most eloquent man in the State, pronounced the funeral oration. And there, beneath an appropriate monument, the body of Daniel Boone now lies, awaiting the summons of the resurrection trumpet. Life's labor done, securely laid. In this his last retreat. Unheeded o'er his silent dust the storms of earth shall beat. The end. End of Chapter 14, and end of Daniel Boone, by John S. C. Abbott. Recorded by Allison Hester in Athens, Georgia.